Deadbeat dad abandoned me as a child, so I took everything from him. In 1990, when I was just out of middle school and my sister was still in elementary school, my dad met his third wife at the only gas station in our town. They soon moved in together, and my dad abandoned us in our basement apartment for a nasty houseboat that didn't run so he could live with her. He would show up every other week and give me $40 for groceries. Eventually someone figured out the situation and called my mom. We went to live with her, which was, believe it or not, worse. My dad and his boat wife got married in 1991. Not long after, she called me and told me my dad's brain tumor had returned even though it hadn't, and she said that he couldn't handle the stress of being around us. She said the only people he could bear to be around were her and her son Shorty, who was my age. When I called my dad to ask if this was true, he said it wasn't, and he just couldn't believe that she would say that to begin with. That was one of our last conversations we ever had until 2 years ago. I worked my way through college, living in my car from time to time. My dad and I had no contact, but I heard from my family that he bought a house and put his son through some vocational classes. When my grandmother died, Shorty and boat wife showed up in a truck and took all the furniture and anything else that wasn't tied down or already gone. Eventually I went no contact with my dad's side of the family. I struggled for years, decades really, but I made it and I have a great job and a good family now. The best revenge is living well, right? Well, 2 years ago I got a call from my dad's brother Alan. He told me my dad was in a nursing home in another state and I needed to go see him because he needed my help since Shorty had ghosted him. The nursing home, coincidentally, was about 20 minutes from my house. I saw an opportunity and I went. The reunion was underwhelming. I didn't want to make amends, but I did want to hear how he wound up dumped and all alone in another state. And it was a really good story. Boat wife got lung cancer and put my dad in a nursing home before she died in 2017. She suffered and I was happy to hear it, but I was sad it wasn't SS cancer. Shorty became his power of attorney when she died and had been visiting my dad, living in my dad's house with his 2 children, and taking care of my dad's affairs since his mom died. But now he was missing and my dad was worried about him. He asked me to drive the hour and a half to his house to check on everything. That's all he wanted. He never even asked me how I had been. I agreed to go mostly out of morbid curiosity. I'd never even been to my dad's house. I did want to see where he lived with his real family for 30 years. I wanted to see what could have been my life. It was 50 shades of effing awful. The grass hadn't been cut all summer. You couldn't get to the front door because of the overgrowth. There were 3 pickup trucks in the yard, 2 were full of trash. Cabs and beds and backseats, just trash. I couldn't understand it. My dad's modified SUV was on 4 flats and full of garbage, too. I didn't have a key so I just walked around to the back. From what windows I could look through, the inside was in shambles and hoarded to hell. On the front and carport doors were dozens of notices from the city that they were going to condemn the place. The garage was also hoarded. Boxes and boxes stacked on each other, most rotting from the rain. The yard was full of garbage. There was a letter in the mailbox notifying him that since the house was abandoned, mail would not be delivered anymore. That night, I googled powers of attorney and how to use them. I went back the next day and showed my bedbound dad the pictures on my phone. He vowed to beat Shorty's ass, then asked me to help more. I told him I would, but he'd have to sign the power of attorney over to me. All of it, financial and medical. If he didn't, he could figure this shit out by himself. He agreed, so I set about finding a lawyer who would drive to another state and do the paperwork in the nursing home. Bless that lawyer for being so good at his job, because all I did was tell him what I knew and he put together a beautifully bulletproof power of attorney. It was full of stuff I didn't even know I would need. He also filed the paperwork to revoke Shorty's POA and now I'm unstoppable. We're from a small rural town and it's the kind of creepy landlocked place that, no matter how long you've been gone or how far away you've been, when you go back, you'll see someone you know. Even if you don't know you know them. It's suffocating but it can also be helpful. I got to work the next morning. I didn't know how scorched the earth would be when I finished, and I didn't want Shorty or anyone from his inbred family trying to find me, so I made sure nothing I did had my name on it. I opened a Google account for my dad and got a Google number. I opened a P.O. box for him in his town. I put in a mail forwarding notice. I pulled his credit report. I took the POA to my dad's small town bank, changed the address on his accounts and got new account numbers. I requested copies of every transaction back to the day boat wife had died. I had to go to the main branch 2 hours from my house the next day to pick the records up. I sat in the lobby all afternoon going through the account. I cornered a service rep and got a crash course in his debits and deposits. This is when I figured out the extent of Shorty's staggering stupidity. My dad got about $5,000 a month in disability and social security every month. Twice a week, Shorty was going into a branch and withdrawing cash. All of the cash. And every time he did it as the POA, he had to sign a form stating that he was acting on behalf of my dad and that form was notarized by the bank. I went through every withdrawal and got the bank to confirm that every one of them was made by Shorty. Then I went to the house and called a locksmith. I knew it was bad, but I had no idea what was waiting for me there. He got the first door open, and the stench rolled out like a fog bank. We both gagged. 2 locks later, I was so embarrassed by what he had to see and smell that I gave him a $60 tip. With shiny new keys in hand, I called the cops. I told them I was POA for my dad, was checking on his house, and there were 3 vehicles there that didn't belong to him. He asked me if I knew who they belonged to. I said no and I wanted them towed. He told me to call a tow company and he would meet them there. They showed up with 2 wreckers. The tow truck guy got out and asked me for a signature. I only signed my first name. As I was signing he asked, "Do you know Shorty?" Running on pure hatred at this point, I surprised myself and asked, "Do you?" He said he did and that he's an a-hole. I responded, he might be. Hey, can you do me a favor? If you see him, will you tell him that I'm coming for him? His bravado evaporated. He knows a crazy beach when he sees one. They towed the trucks. When everyone was gone, I opened the door in the garage to peek in. The sun was going down and it was dark in the house. I heard something faint, and after some seconds realized it was the roaches and the rats doing their roach and rat stuff. I could smell it all in my hair. I sat on the carport steps and watched the sun go down. I was mad. Just so cosmically livid that 72 hours was all it took to dissolve 3 decades, and here I was, stinking and listening to the rats and cleaning everyone else's poop up. Taking time away from my family, and for what? I had a coming to Jesus with myself. I could either bow out now or double down. And the thing is that I'm tenacious to a goddamn fault. I had to be to survive, and this was a bone I couldn't put down. The thought of Shorty's life being upended, his only source of income disappearing literally overnight, and my dad having to hear, secondhand from me, that he's broken alone, made me absolutely giddy. I desperately wanted them both to lose what they had left. I decided I was going to triple dog down, and my real plan began.